In this video, I'm going to talk about the new Room Book extension, which is available from the Autodesk Subscription Center, and it works on top of Revit Architecture 2011. The Room Book extension allows us to do a takeoff of the rooms and take off the basically the floor finishes, the wall finishes, and the ceiling finishes. So I'm going to start by going through each one of the icons. First of which is the calculation settings. There's two default types of calculation standards. The first one, which is the default, is International Standard, and the second one is the VOB Standard Germany. So unless you're in Germany, you're going to be using the International Standard. So we're going to hit OK here and hit OK and go back. The second area is the surface materials, and it basically it's the different types of materials that are typically used for the interior finishes of particular rooms. So if I click on this, and I can go to either apply surface material to the rooms, or I can edit the surface material types. So I'm going to go to edit surface material types, and basically it works much like a family type parameter. So for instance, we have various types here: bath, cellar, exterior, facilities, etc. And each one of those types has a wall surface. So we can come in here and say custom, or we can do it by element. By element, of course, is going to be whatever the wall's current materials are set to, basically the configuration of the wall type. For materials, we can basically build up the type of materials. So if we've got like a compound wall here, say for instance this got maybe backer board and then tile, we could basically come in here and select the various materials that compose the wall that we want to take off, and then we would get the square footage for each one of those walls based on the surface area of that wall. We've got a floor surface, and again that works the same way as the walls, where we can build up the various materials there. We've got a ceiling surface, and we've got a room circumference. So I'm going to hit OK here. If I was to go and apply surface materials to the rooms, I could basically go through here and select each one of the rooms and determine what type of room materials I want to be applying to it. I'm going to leave them all by element for this example, but as you can see here, I could go by office and say, for instance, that it's an office type or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel on that. There's an option to hide and or show quantity IDs. Once the calculation is complete, then turning that off will basically give us a visual feedback of what the quantities are for each one of the rooms. So I'm going to go ahead and hit calculate room quantities. The dialog box that comes up from there. We've got standard here. I can duplicate and make some changes there. So if I go to here to selection, this brings up dialog box, kind of like what we had seen before where we did the surface material apply. But basically I can come down here and select which ones I want to include in my calculation. So if we're maybe doing a calculation of existing, or maybe doing a calculation of new construction, we could select the appropriate rooms that apply to that. So I'm going to go and leave these all checked, but obviously as you can see here I can uncheck these and they won't be included in my calculation. I can check them, check all, check none, invert selection, etc. We can also create what's called room groups. I haven't done that in this case, but if we had any room groups, then they would be listed here. Okay, the next area is the calculation range, which basically is going to determine what it is that I'm going to take off of my calculation, whether or not I'm taking off the wall surfaces, the floor surface, ceilings, their circumferences, as well as furniture elements. We can also capture those as well. And the considered detail level, so medium and fine, whether or not the different detail levels, depending on what they will actually capture in the view. A computation height is basically 0 for all levels or values stored within the levels. Top ceiling factor is how much of the wall is actually above the ceiling. And then the next area is considering for windows and doors, basically how we're going to consider the openings in the walls for the windows and doors, whether or not we're doing it by height and width or by a rough height and width. And obviously that's going to be a slightly different result if we're using rough height and width, and obviously it's going to be more of the opening. It's not going to consider the finished opening. All right, so we can export the results after we've actually completed a calculation, and the export formats that we have are basically MS Excel, a designed web format, or CSV. If we are using MS Excel, then we have the ability to set up a export template. If we use an export template for design web format, then I would have to actually go and create one here, or a CSV, for instance. I'd have to create a template for that one as well. We're going to leave this as export format here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit calculate on my rooms now. Okay, so I paused the recording while the calculation was running. It took approximately 8 minutes to run the calculation, and I have 48 rooms in my model. So now with the calculation complete, I can go and hit view or edit results. So I've got an opportunity to basically go through and look at each one of the spaces and basically change the room name, for instance, what type of room quantity I'm looking at. So for instance, I could be looking at wall surfaces right now and correcting any mistakes that I may find, or I could come into the floor surfaces, do the same thing. Go into ceiling surfaces, and then as well as look at the different view levels to see where those different objects are located. So if I'm happy with my results, then I just hit OK here, and now I have the opportunity to go ahead and export it like I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go to hit export here, and I'm going to give it a name. Hang on one second, I didn't want to go out to a CSV, I'm going to go out to an MS Excel. So let me hit export one more time. So it's going to pull it directly into Microsoft Excel from there. If you're doing that, you would obviously have to have Excel in place. The export is still going on, so if you look at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet, we see that we've got dollar signs across here, and as the information continues to be exported out, we'll see these names populate out. So there's the floor surfaces that have just completed. So I'm just going to hang tight and let this thing complete before I really go into any one of the tabs. There's the ceiling surfaces that's complete, and as that's coming across, you can see some of the information that's being captured there. There's the room circumferences. Here comes the furniture elements. So it's basically telling me what furniture I have in each one of the rooms, and then I have a all room quantities tab, which basically gives me a tabulation of all the information. So it looks like the export is complete, so I'm just going to go to each one of the tabs now and just take a general look across here. So looking at 101 office here, I see that I've got 12 walls, and then we've got what's called main areas and then sub areas. So in some of the main walls we've got default wall, and then if I look at the surface materials of some of those different walls here, we can see that I've got gypsum board as some of the materials. I've got metal stud. If I double click here, then I can see the lengths and the widths and the heights populate out. Going over to the floor surfaces, I can see what the type of floor is for each one of those rooms and what it was comprised of. What the area was, whether or not it had a door threshold. That's really not going to apply on a floor surface. Going over the ceiling surfaces, we see obviously again that I've got different types of ceilings in there. Going over to room circumferences, it's basically just a report, obviously, of the circumference of each one of my rooms. Going under furniture elements, like I mentioned a moment ago, I see a tabulation of each one of the pieces of furniture that is in each one of the rooms. So we've got basically a count of each type of furniture and then a tabulation of total of all the furniture elements within the room. So and if I scroll down here, then I do see a total quantity on each one of the sheets here. So for instance, I'm looking at the furniture now. I've got a total of 168 pieces of furniture in my model. And then of course, as I mentioned, I've got the all quantities tab where I can basically look at all the information in one place. So that's an overview of the tool. Hope you found it informative. Thank you.